We all love movies, but the world of entertainment has been shifting over the years, and now our options are broader than ever before. We may be waiting for movie theaters to reopen, but in the interim, we've got Netflix, HBO Max, Amazon Prime, Disney+, Hulu, Apple TV+, CBS All Access, and more to keep us busy. We've got more incredible movies to be excited about and discuss than ever before, so let's dig in. Welcome to the Film Board. On this episode, we are talking about Fisher, Number 5 is Alive Stevens' film Palmer, starring Justin Timberlake, Juno Temple, Alicia Wainwright, June Squibb, and introducing Ryder Allen, now available on Apple TV+.
I'm glad you're back. I imagine it's going to take some time getting used to. You just got to get yourself back out there.
Palmer, you were All-USA player 2 years in a row at Riverside?
Yes, sir. A whole lot's changed.
That boy, that's Sam. His mama took off. He'll be staying with us till she's back.
You know you're a boy, right?
Yeah.
In the hours that I've known.
Do you know when my mama's coming back?
He's gonna have to go in the system.
There's something seriously wrong with that kid. Would you set me free?
How did you end up in prison?
Don't matter. I did what I did.
Spoke of what you did today.
And there's nowhere to hide.
Listen to me, son. Kids are mean, especially when they see something that they ain't used to seeing.
You ain't nothing but a criminal. You got no right looking after any child.
There's things in this world you can be, and there's things that you can't. How many boys do you see on that show?
None.
What does that tell you?
That I can be the first. Trick-or-treat!
Get some treats.
Truth is, I haven't felt like I was good at anything until Sam.
Keep running till we learn to find peace.
Shelley came back.
Keep running till we learn to get off me!
Hey!
Couldn't stay out of trouble, could you?
I can't abandon that boy. I will not abandon that boy. Heard y'all had a little tea party the other day. Oh, yeah.
Careful, Palmer. It's hot. Pinkies, please.
Real good.
My name is Andy Nelson, host of The Next Reel, and today I'm chatting with two hosts from various Next Reel properties to get their thoughts on this movie so we can share them with all of you. Mandy Kaplan.
Andy.
Hey, and Tommy Metz III.
It's me.
I can't wait to talk about this movie with you two. As we say on The Next Reel, when the movie ends, our conversation begins. So let's talk. Palmer. We all watched this as the final movie to talk about on the film board for January. What are your initial thoughts of this, Mandy?
It felt like a really well done Lifetime movie. Like a very well acted, well paced, but predictable, heartstring tugging movie.
I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, Tommy, this was your, we three talked about this trailer back in December when you picked this as your trailer.
Oh, that's right.
That's Bashert, guys. Nice work getting all the gang back together.
Right? I know. How convenient is that? Tommy, you had this to say about it. I know for a fact while I'm watching it, I will go, this is pretty cloying through tears. Like I will be actively crying while I'm saying this is manipulative and I don't necessarily care for all the things this movie is doing.
Wow. I've never had anybody quote me back to me like that. That's impressive.
I had forgotten that I said that, but yeah, to be honest, what I went into this with my guard up for that. I had forgotten that I had said that, but I went in being like, all right, let's see, trying not to be a Grinch, but also just waiting to be way melodramatic, way manipulative. And to be honest, I didn't really feel that way. with this. I thought it was surprisingly sensitively done, except for one big sequence that we can get into that I did not care for. I thought it was really honest and sensitively told. And it had some really nice details. I thought it was really well acted. Maybe I don't see any Lifetime movies, so I don't know what that's like, but this felt like a very, very conventional film that is life affirming and exactly the kind of film that I kind of wanted right now.
Oh, great. That's fantastic to hear. I think that I'm in Mandy's camp on this. It definitely felt like a pretty straightforward Lifetime type of movie. But that being said, I was really taken by like the honesty with some of the characters in the film, and I really enjoyed the way they were portrayed. But I guess leading into my next question, I mean, on the surface, this does seem like a story we've all seen a million times before. A pretty standard drama of an ex-con trying to make good after he's been released, he's on parole, and he's just trying to get his life on track. Do you feel like the story is more than that? Is the addition of having Sam as this young, kind of gender non-binary child enough to really make this film stand out?
It didn't go far enough in that direction to really change the formula. That said, I loved Sam. I mean, this kid, this actor is fantastic. The character was so winning. I just loved him. But I don't think it changed it from the norm that we would expect. Like, of course, we're going to love this kid, and this kid is helpless. And so, but I loved him like a lot.
I wonder if this is what it takes to have that kind of story told, involving non-binary or gender non-conforming things. If you need a little bit of conventional sugar, or not sugar, but if you need to be sort of brought in by the hand, then I'm fine with that. I'll take that. And it was enough for me. And there was enough honesty in, I thought, Justin Timberlake's performance, and these little details, like when he's in his grandmother, June Squibb's, bathroom at her house, and he starts to take all of his toiletries out with him, and then remembers he doesn't have to because he lives there. I'd never seen that before. And there was that, and just little ways that Justin Timberlake really played understated for a lot of the movie, which felt elevated to me. And I thought that really helped it shine through.
Well, and that's, I think, an incredible strength of the film is having Justin Timberlake as the lead, because I thought he was so on point with everything about this character. Like, I felt all of the pain and the anger and the frustration of everything that he had gone through with all of the stuff, having been a football star to having, been out for an injury and leading to this criminal act that he ended up being put away for 12 years. And I just felt all of that in his presence. And I really enjoyed the way he carried that character throughout the film. And it was really, he's an actor who I don't think of often as an actual good actor. I guess it's just because of his musical career, and because he just seems like so often I think I picture him as the character that he played in
Dick in a Box.
Trolls World Tour.
That one, right. Trolls World Tour in The Social Network. I picture like that is Justin Timberlake. But then I'm always reminded that he was in Alpha Dogs, that he was in, Black Snake Moan, that he did these films. And I'm like, God, there is a really interesting character that he is able to kind of pull up.
I thought he was fantastic. I have, in my mind, I was like, well, it could have been Jake Gyllenhaal. It could have been Ryan Gosling. It could have been any one of those guys, and they all would have done a fine job. But Justin Timberlake was really, really good in this role. And it just felt like a great match.
Yeah, and he's so wildly charismatic that when he starts opening up, it happens during the bowling montage is when that final switch happens, and he's like high-fiving and like this. He's immediately so captivating, and you're like, I want to hang out with him all the time. So like to be able to cover all of that magnetism with a beard and stoicness really is harder, I think, than it seems.
He's one of those actors who I think can really be a great chameleon, because you see him performing as a singer, and it's just like, all the sexy back stuff is like, he's like this sexy, singer who does like amazing performances and everything. But then I see him in this, and I'm like, he's like, I buy him completely. I mean, even just like the physical look of him, I just feel like he is of this world. And it's I think that's an amazing feat to pull off, where it's not just a movie star. It's like he's actually an actor who's inhabiting this character.
When he was, I know this is such a small detail, but I liked it very much. When he works as a janitor and he was like emptying the gutters, he looked like a guy who does that every day. He looked very comfortable in that plebeian role. And I had this flash of like, Justin Timberlake has probably never cleaned a gutter or done any menial work. I mean, his whole life has been a star and had people to do all this for him, but he embodied that beautifully.
It's funny. I thought the exact same thing, but while he was cleaning the urinal, I was like, has he ever held a bottle of cleaning fluid in his life that he's had to spray on something?
Right. In terms of his character, I credit the writer with really artfully leaking out his story. It never felt exposition-y, which is such a pet peeve of mine when you're watching a movie and they're like, hey, you old dog, you're out of jail. What were you in for again? And it's like scene 1 and he's like, I was in for this crime, but before that I was a football star. We got his story piecemeal throughout the entire film in a way that felt very natural and organic, and I appreciated that.
And when we finally heard it, when he was on his date in the backyard, it didn't have that kind of dump. Well, not dump. That was a gross thing to say, but he like ramped up to it and had like a number of sips and I was like leaning forward because I just had enough stuff. It was a neat way to do it, not just to space it out, but also by doing that, it developed tension for it, which would never be there if you were, I like that. What were you in for again? That's for the producers that brought us. Hey, there's my little sister.
Right. Oh, yes.
Cheryl Guerriero, I think maybe is how you say it, wrote the script. And this is like her third writing credit. And the other two are like things I've never heard of, very low rated films. And then to see this come out, I'm like, I was really impressed with what she pulled out here. It's just that honesty that is in these characters. And obviously a lot of that comes through because of the way that they're performed. But like you were saying, I think it was a very smart way to kind of bring that story forward about his crime.
And not just his crime, but, his relationship to the other guys that were involved and his backstory from college. Like his entire life came in very reasonable chunks throughout the movie. And I appreciated that. That was pretty interesting. Like I was curious about his relationship with his buddies, and it was interesting as we got to that final confrontation that he has with some of them in the bar after that horrific, what they did to Sam. It was just like unbelievable that adults were doing that. But, when it really kind of you start getting a sense that they were in on the whole thing. And especially his buddy, who's I don't know if he's the sheriff or the deputy or whoever he is, but his son, the fact that Cole had been involved and pretty much got away with not having been in trouble and now is, working for law enforcement. And I was like, that's really interesting the way that I thought those relationships were painted. Yeah.
It's the story of this ex-con. I mean, again, as I said earlier, it feels very, very standard. He gets out. He immediately hooks up with one of the local skanks, I guess, but there certainly is more to her story that we find. But he kind of hooks up with her right away. And then he ends up kind of having this relationship that is able to build. But let's talk about him and his relationships a little bit, because the first one, this is where he hooks up with Juno Temple at the bar. She immediately comes in and she's saying things to the barkeeper that my wife, this is, I also want to talk about who this film is for, because we started watching this with our kids, because I'm like, this would be a good one to watch as a family.
No.
And then Juno Temple comes in and she has her line about what she wants to have done. And my wife's like, maybe we should stop this and maybe we should find something else to watch right now, because she's like, I know exactly what the next scene is going to be because of this moment with Juno Temple.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't know that it was going to be that much of a next scene, though.
Right.
So much of this movie does, when you guys are saying Lifetime, a lot of it also felt, what do you say? Not religious, like a faith-based film. Like it could be one of those, but then with these crazy R-rated parts shoved in there, because that sex scene felt really jarring and did not match most of the rest of the movie. I get that they were showing he had been in prison for so long, and so it was just sort of like this huge release, but eesh. Yeah. I don't know. It didn't match for Sam to be the age that Sam was. And this could be a movie where you could show to children or have family. No, not this one. Could be is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If you take out some of these elements, because this could be a helpful healing movie for certain people. But with Sam's age and then that R-rated and the sex scenes and stuff is weird.
Yeah.
It's like having an R-rated Goonies. I don't know. What?
Hot.
It really threw me off, and I'm glad that we did turn it off to switch to something else for a little while.
Yeah.
And that's what's so frustrating, because I was just like, I don't know. I just really wanted this to be, from the trailer and everything, it looked like this will be a great movie to watch with the kids to kind of explore, the other types of people that are out in the world. And I thought that would be great. And it really, it is, but not, because of those elements.
It's like a family night and you're like, what's this Fatal Attraction? Let's give this a try.
Right. Or Requiem for a Dream.
Were any of us surprised when Squibbers kicked the bucket? I mean, the moment she appeared on screen, I was like, uh-oh. She's not going to last past the first act.
Oh, see, and I'm not making a joke when I say I really might not be versed in Lifetime or these kind of dramas. I just don't watch a lot of them because I didn't see that coming.
Oh.
I thought it would be sort of but I mean, when it happened, I was like, oh, right. Like, we can't just keep having her be like church again.
Right.
But it didn't occur to me at the time because I thought it was also going to be part of his redemption would be through her eyes. But no, it made sense as soon as as soon as she goes.
Her eyes had little X's on them.
They did.
No, it's also a Disney trope that, the kindly parent figure is going to kick the bucket, leaving the hero to find their way on their own. But
right.
And I love her, but I was like, oh, Squib, we're not going to have you for long.
But interestingly, and this is something I didn't see when she kicked the bucket, is that I didn't realize that it was going to end up creating like a ticking clock of some sort for the story, because all of a sudden there's this letter from the lawyer that, hey, you know what? The house isn't yours. It's getting sold. And so you only have X amount of time to be in it. And I was like, oh, okay. That actually ended up being an interesting element that kind of, I mean, it never really comes into play too much, but it is something that they have to be thinking about and kind of like figuring out, how am I going to move forward? So I at least appreciated that it did move it into some direction other than now he's just in the house by himself figuring things out.
Right.
I want to circle back to the relationships because I kind of got on my own side tangent about who's this film for, really. But okay, so we have Juno Temple and they have this one night thing that's going on, even though she's in this relationship with
Mr. Mayhem.
Mr. Mayhem, that's right, which was great.
Can we talk about him for just one quick second? I want to derail you again.
Yeah, no, please do.
Andy. Did this movie know that it had Dean Winters in it? Did it seem like the movie was trying to hide Dean Winters? It was all long shots.
Right.
Like, it's Dean Winters. Yeah. He's like a big enough actor that you would want to be like, look, it's Dean Winters. It's almost like the movie is ashamed of him or he got in a fight with the director. Isn't it weird?
I felt like there was definitely a cut scene.
Yeah. Something happened.
One or two cut scenes where we would get to know him.
Right. And you only hear him from afar. It's so weird.
The only time you really get close to him is when
he makes him fly.
He kind of jumps into the middle of their brawl and hurls Dean across the room. Jerry is his character. Right. And that's really the only time you get close. And then even then when you're close, it's like you're behind his head or he's getting flung across the room. And it's really hard to pinpoint who he is. And he's one of those faces though, like even from the long shots, I'm like, oh, it's Mr. Mayhem guy. And and then it just was strange. And I was like, it had to be a director's choice to kind of keep it from afar. And I was trying to figure out if you're going to do that as a director and you're going to kind of keep this menacing other man in Sam's mom's life kind of painted that way, where it's just this dark figure, the one who's possibly keeps drawing her into the world of drugs. I mean, who knows exactly what their story is, but he's just always painted as this dark character. So why cast Dean Winters in the role?
Why Dean Winters? Yeah.
I have the theory that they're old friends, and Fisher was like, I'm directing this, and would you come for a couple of days and do this part? And Dean Winters was like, for you, pal, anything. I was there when that conversation happened. We were at Applebee's. It was a lovely time.
Lovely. Yeah. Pre-COVID time.
Yeah. That's my theory, is that they're friends.
But then wouldn't you want to show his face more? Wouldn't you want him to turn around and be like, get out of my trailer, and not just sort of be a faceless person who's thrown across a thing? I don't know.
Honestly, I actually would buy into Mandy's version of the story more, and then see Fisher Stevens saying, you know what, but this is how I'm going to shoot the character because I want him to be this way. Are you okay with me shooting you this way, where you're just only seen as this distant, menacing threat? And I could see him kind of spinning that to Dean more than, just casting Dean as this actor, and then Dean saying, hey, where are my close-ups?
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe he gets paid by like FaceTime, like how you can't give an extra a line in a movie because then you have to pay them. And so he always has to be like just turning around, and then they got him on the cheap. Right. Okay, going back to Andy, what you were saying about relationships.
Yeah, just the relationships. Okay, so we've got Juno Temple as the first character that enters Palmer's life, and she ends up being she's Sam's mom. She's a drug addict, always disappearing, and because of those disappearances is why Palmer ends up taking care of it. Technically, it's Vivian, old Squibby, who takes care of him first, and then Palmer. But Juno Temple, okay, so the relationship here is obviously purely just a one-night stand thing. He just got out of jail. This is the first woman who really he comes into contact with, and they go to town. And then, of course, it ends up becoming a more complex relationship because of the whole thing with Sam and everything. But, okay, so let's start there with that relationship. I mean, it starts sexual, but it ends up being a much more complex one. How does it work, and how is Juno Temple for you two?
It's hard to separate her from her exquisite scene at the end. I've always been a fan of hers, and the beginning was very uncomfortable because she's so addled and such an addict. But that scene with Sam at the end is breathtaking. Is that what you were asking? No.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just the whole thing. I mean, because obviously she's, and there's a big relationship that she has with Palmer because it's I don't think it's initially contentious. It's really not contentious until it's clear to her that Palmer is trying to get Sam away from her because she's a bit of a mess.
Right.
But I mean, do you buy into like the way that their relationship is portrayed as between the two of them?
Yeah, me too. Why, did you have a trouble with it?
Weirdly, and I don't know if this is a thing that I have with Juno Temple, where I see her in this role, and I don't know if it's just because of something like Killer Joe, but I end up feeling like this is like, I'm like, is she being typecast in this role? And I don't think she is, because she's in such a variety of films.
And she was just in Ted Lasso,
which I'm in the middle of, so I had a double Juno Temple day.
There's none of the for lack of a better term, like trashy or anything. She's very in control of herself, and she's a very positive hero figure in Ted Lasso. So,
that's great. That's great.
No, because if I had just seen her in Killer Joe, which I deeply love, this, I'd be like, yeah, because it would seem, right. Because they're very connected.
Yeah, exactly. And and maybe it's unfair of me to think of that, but it's like, I feel like, and I know I see her in a lot of things, but that like performance has been burned into my brain from that movie, because it's such a powerful performance. Everyone really in that movie. And so then to see her in this, I'm just like, I feel like she's, doing the same thing. But okay, I'm thrilled that she's in Ted Lasso. I'm glad to hear that she's doing something else. And so that's great. But I mean, to your point, Mandy, I do think that she is given some room to work with this character. And I think as an actress, that's probably what drew her to this part, because she gets to have this really powerful emotional moment with her child.
Oh, if you get to have that scene, you'll do anything leading up to get to that. That scene was gut wrenching, and she was perfect.
It's a tough scene. I I can't imagine having to portray something like that. I can't imagine as a parent having to go through something like that. But it's a hard thing learning to, or being in that position where you can recognize that you need to let go.
Mm-hmm.
Do you both feel like it made sense for her character to come to that realization?
Absolutely.
Okay, because that was one thing that I was like, she was so adamant when she came to the court that do I completely buy that she's going to make this decision? Or I felt like she was so selfish. I kind of felt the running time at that part. I was like, yeah, let me guess. This is around the 2-hour mark, is because it just seemed like off camera, she really came to her come to Jesus sort of moment, which we hadn't really no kind of lead up to at all. In real life, I would have thought that it would have taken another take off, fall down, come back kind of thing, like another big failure. But that would have just dragged them. Like, I think this works. Yeah. I don't really necessarily agree that it's perfectly realistic, but that's okay. I think that speaks to why I struggled with it. Is because it ended up feeling like so quick. Like, we just saw her in court screaming at him about, he's mine, all this sort of stuff. And then she kind of comes to this realization that she has to make the switch. But she was high in court and she seemed sober in the scene with Sam. Well, that's definitely a possibility too, yeah. In the light of day, she knew the right thing to do. Yeah. There's nothing saying she wouldn't flip out that night and get angry again and show up on the doorstep and say, I changed my mind. She keeps going back and forth. That's for the sequel that nobody wants to see. That's right. Palmer 2. Palmer 2, on second thought. That's a good point. That's a really good point. That's indicative of an addict's behavior and why it's so tough, because when an addict is sober, they are their true selves and they say the right thing and do the right thing, and they want so desperately to, make good choices. So it didn't bump for me. Well, I'm glad, because I feel like that was something I just felt was moved a little too quickly through, but I'm glad that it works. And I think that it, like Tommy said, it needed to be there. I didn't have a problem with it being there. I actually really felt that scene was incredibly powerful. I wish that it had been moved a little more effectively for me to it, but still, I'm glad that it's that she does come to that. And your point makes sense. So he ends up meeting, while he's working at the school, he meets Alicia Wainwright's character, Maggie, who is a teacher here. I'm not going to get into my concerns about somebody with a criminal record finding a way through the system to get a job at the public elementary school. But let's just talk about Maggie and her role as the teacher, and the one who ends up kind of connecting with him and coming into his life to be kind of the one who he can really find a relationship with. How did Maggie work for you two? I liked her once I got over the fact of the movie pretty quickly just starts throwing women at Justin Timberlake's character. I mean, he meets someone in the bar, I get it, and then she just sees him at the school and gives him a, hey, hubba hubba little look. And then she just sort of pursues him when he is not charismatic at all. In the beginning, he's quiet, he's weird. She shows up, he's drinking a beer at what seems to be like 10 a.m. or something like that. But he is fresh meat. And she says this town is so small. And oh, well, I'm just offering. When someone new comes to town, it's like, oh, someone I haven't rejected yet. That doesn't make me feel. Ooh, the janitor. Better. Like, oh, the bearded, moody janitor. Dibs, please. Yeah, no, I mean, I liked her as an actress and I liked their relationship. I liked all of that stuff. It just took a little bit of it's a little bit of the feeling in a reverse that I got of what's her name before you explained very nicely about the addiction thing, Mandy, about Juno Temple turning on a dime, that it just, in order to have this relationship, she just needed to sort of be like, yep, the janitor's for me. But I liked the speed that their relationship took, meaning the length, that it was really a slow and hanging out and stuff like that. I liked that a lot. That, I think, is why I ended up finding it quite effective. Even though I was like, why is she jumping with him so quickly? But yeah, I really just, this is something where, again, to that kind of the honest way that some of this stuff was portrayed, I felt like I kind of bought that they were just kind of work acquaintances for a time. And they both kind of had this draw to Sam and wanted to make sure that Sam was watched out for and taken care of and not bullied and all that sort of stuff. And it slowly evolved into a relationship. And I was like, honestly, kind of surprised that they ended up making it or having it kind of have a very natural evolution. And so to that end, I think it was very effective the way that it was done.
Yeah, talking about this being, again, I don't exactly know what I'm talking about, but going back to the writer, Cheryl. She does, just like Mandy said, again, I mean, she handles very conventional situations in a nice way, still just within 2 hours. The movie didn't feel overlong to me. The movie felt right about on time, and yet it was just handled more elegantly, where I think a lot of these movies would be like, ram them together.
I also felt the reason she went over there in the first place was justified by her just unabashed adoration for Sam.
Yeah.
And making I wanted to make sure Sam got home and who's this guy taking care of Sam and offer. I know she gave her phone number, but I bought her cover story a bit that she was saying, like, if you need help with Sam, I'm here. I love him. So I'm a bleeding heart.
It did feel like a cover story to me.
Definitely like let me give you my phone number felt more flirty than caring for a kid, but
it works. So, I mean, I guess let's pivot to Sam and this relationship with this kid. And I mean, I was endlessly impressed with Ryder Allen, who plays him, who's just a third grader. I was just floored. I'm like, this kid is so young, but he is so effectively portraying the emotions that he needs to, and just the honesty and just the way that he came across as this young boy who saw, I'm not sure all the right ways to word this properly, but he saw himself kind of more in the girl role, and he would wear girl outfits, and he watched this princess show that he loved so much, and just that gender nonconformity that the show really, or the movie really kind of took on very honestly, and the way that characters like Vivian and Maggie and even his mom really just allowed it to be. Yeah. And I was just like, wow, that is so powerful that it started from that place. It wasn't even like the story about this kid who was going through it and trying to like all of a sudden say, hey, I want to start wearing a princess dress for Halloween. It's just like he was already that kid.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's interesting. He was already fully formed. It's Palmer going into Sam's world, not the other way around. Yeah, that's an interesting point. And I liked the amount of pushback, and not pushback trying to, he thought, help Sam, that Eddie Palmer, that Justin Timberlake does, because it always ends on the side of right. Like he tries to say, like, boys don't play with dolls. He's like, I do. And then over the Halloween costume, when they have the back and forth, he's like, they do have it for you. It's Peter Prince. And the kid's like, And then the very next shot is he's getting the Princess Penelope. That's a nice way to do that. That's a good way, instead of just sort of like having a big slap down and then a requiem, a coming back and saying sorry. I thought it was nice. It kept things moving.
I was curious about Ryder Allen. I didn't do any reading, so I don't know if he is a child who has gender questions. I don't know the answer to that. But it was a very brave, heartfelt, simple performance, and I think he was spot on. I was blown away by that kid.
Yeah.
And anytime you have a kid chasing a car, screaming, is that the scene you had trouble with, Tommy?
Yeah.
I knew it. Anytime you do that, and we've seen that many times, a child in enough pain to chase a car, screaming for the person, and like, I'm instantly heartbroken.
I thought he did great. I thought the emotions through that scene were really, I completely believed them. But frustratingly, my brain immediately went to, oh my God, they're letting this young kid run next to a car. What if they run over his toes? Like, it's just like the worst. Like, I know I shouldn't be thinking about this while I'm watching this movie, but I'm like, this is like, what are they doing to protect this kid from this car? It's just, my head. But he's an adorable little boy. I was looking at his Instagram page because that's like the one link that he has connected to his IMDb page, because it's really his only film. This is really, I mean, he did a performance in a TV show, but otherwise it's all just him on Instagram and being a part of this movie. And, I haven't dug too deep to really get a sense of his gender conformity or nonconformity, but he just seems like a normal kid. And that's what I love so much about him, regardless of whether he is, what his kind of gender conformity is in real life. I just thought I bought him as a kid 100%. And he just played this role so well. And so to that end, I mean, this is a film that really has this message about being who you are and kind of this sense of conformity, nonconformity. I think that it's really honest in the way that it's portrayed. Does it come across, I mean, Tommy, back to your initial comment from the trailer, does it come across as cloying the way the message is portrayed, or did you end up buying it? Do you feel like people are going to connect with this message?
I believed it, and I thought it was honest, and I thought it was really affecting. And I think it has a purpose and a message to deliver, and I think it delivers it really well. I think it's very well acted, extremely well shot, and very sensitively directed. It's very easy for this kind of movie to be the scene of the kid running after the car for 2 hours. Maybe I'm giving too much credit to the director, but just to put it on that, he never lets it. He really holds back and holds back and holds back. And a lot of that is, very understated stuff and very grounded filmmaking. I was a fan.
Can I ask why you object to the kid chasing the car? I don't know why I instantly knew that would be the scene that bugged you.
I was already getting so much from the understatedness and the little bouts of emotion that people were having. And then it felt exploitative, I guess. I felt like my nose was being ground in something finally. Potentially because that, as I said, when I went into this, I went in with my guard up a little bit, and I did get affected because I'm not one to shy away from, I'm not like, boo, I'm not shying away from crying or anything. It just, I don't know why I said boo. I'm trying to scare the movie. Maybe it had opened me up in a way that I didn't know, and I got uncomfortable for that. I'm not exactly sure, but that's when I felt like, just for me, the movie tipped over too much, and I didn't know if we needed that.
Yeah, I mean, that moment is a very Lifetime movie moment. Yeah. So I understand.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting because thinking about it, I feel like the moments within that scene that, as I kind of play through it in my head, that I feel I really connected to emotionally were when he actually pushes away from his mom to favor Palmer. And then really it was actually not even the running shot, but it was after the running had happened and he had disappeared into the darkness. And it's just Justin Timberlake's face, kind of in that off angle shot of him
pulling a Michael Clayton.
Looking out the car window. Like those two moments are the ones that really I ended up connecting with more. It was him being isolated and Sam pushing away from his mom. So it's interesting. It's interesting. Something that I think it would be an interesting comparison, Tommy, because there definitely is that big climactic Lifetime sort of moment that we're having right there. And speaking to your point about the restraint of the film, I think that it's worth talking about the scene where Sam comes home from the tea party and he's very upset. His friend's mom who'd brought him home is like, I don't know what happened. I don't know. And we see that Sam's face is covered in makeup, and we find out that it was the adults. It was, Palmer's two older friends who had actually been involved in doing this. I think one of them...
It seemed like it was just Daryl. Am I crazy?
Or maybe it was just Daryl, but Cole, but I thought he said, Cole, but you were home. You knew.
Cole is always just letting these things happen.
Right.
Like his friend Daryl starts fights at the bar like this, and Cole's always just sort of like,
Cole literally stood back. Like, you're in law enforcement and you're watching a fight and you're standing back. Yeah. So yeah, I agree, Tommy, that he might have seen it happening and been like, oh, that's a shame.
Right. Didn't do anything about it. Right. Which speaks to possibly also just the way that his role was in the whole crime. Like he's now just this guy who steps back because he's a passive character, which is interesting. But to your point about the way that this film takes scenes like that as understated, I feel like in an actual Lifetime movie, we would have seen Daryl doing this to the kid. And I feel like by not actually having seen that, where Daryl is actually taking the kid and smearing all the makeup, I feel like it makes it a stronger film this way.
Very much so. And and also though, it would have, I might be wrong about this, but the movie's called Palmer. Are we ever not with Palmer? Or is there a scene in the movie where we're not seeing his life or his POV? I don't think so. Even to the point of when he's being driven away from the kid, again, the Michael Clayton, it's on him. Yeah. So a cutaway, unless I'm forgetting something.
In the trailer, we witness the violence in the trailer before he storms in. He's not there for that. Like, we see him in the house, he hears the voices, and then we go into the trailer with Mr. Mayhem and Juno Temple.
Oh, when he makes him fly? Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that's still within his earshot. That's still in Palmer's world, I guess. It would have maybe felt like a break to go to just be with Ryder Allen in the side, just because I don't think we ever usually do. But either way, regardless of that, yes, I wouldn't need to see both of those scenes. It was enough to have him run in, and the shock of seeing that would have been, yes, I think that would have felt, to use my own horrible, I don't know how to talk, but like rubbing my nose in it. It would have felt more exploitative, maybe. That's a good point. I didn't think about that.
Thinking about that, I do remember that we do start the classroom scenes several times without having Palmer there. But I think every time we do, though, it's when Palmer is about to come in. So I think that's an interesting point that you made, though, how we really are pretty much 100% in Palmer's scope of the story, even if he's coming into the scene a few minutes after it has started.
Sure.
That's interesting. I didn't even think about the fact that it's called Palmer, and here we are. It's virtually always his perspective of things. Yeah.
Yeah. One scene, they planted a seed and then nothing happened, and that bothered me, is, as we've alluded to, he is a convicted violent felon working at an elementary school.
Jeez, yeah.
Which when the principal says, I love a second chance. Okay, fine. But when he threatens...
It's Justin Timberlake.
When he threatens Toby.
Right? I really thought that was going to come back and bite him. Yes, I forgot about that.
Toby goes home and says, the janitor grabbed me and told me he would break my arm if I ever... said anything mean to Sam again.
And his father's like, get the makeup.
It was like, how did that not have repercussions?
Yeah, right.
That felt really tone deaf to me. I just thought, if he had not physically touched Toby, if he had just bent down and been like, you shouldn't be mean. Okay. But he says, I'll break your arm as he's holding a child.
Yeah, right.
That's right. Yeah, no, that really felt like a setup for something that never happened.
I really thought, this is it. This is now, the police are going to come question him. He's going to have violated his parole. This is going to set everything in motion. And nope, it didn't.
And that's interesting, because there are those moments that do feel so stereotypically Lifetime in this, like that, where you're expecting that to happen. A couple other things that were just like, we have to have this character, Vivian's old friend who's the busybody who has to call CPS. It's like, we've got to have that character in here. And then I was just so irritated that Cole's dad, of course, just is constantly just the stereotype, like, I'm not going to trust you. I knew they let you out too soon. Like, all that stuff. I'm like, God, really?
Oh, the sheriff. He was ridiculous. Well, and that was also that when he's putting him in handcuffs and just like, they never should have let you out, was also ADR. There was a lot of ADR in this movie that was all completely unnecessary. This movie's a little afraid of silence. If there's one thing that isn't grounded or isn't sort of naturalistic, is there's a lot of people talking when we're not seeing them talk. It's done really well. It doesn't have that ADR feel of like, clearly this was done later, but you just know it's like Stevens got a little nervous that certain things weren't hammered home.
Very astute observation, Mr. Metz.
Oh, I'm a big ADR watcher. It's a dumb thing to say, but like, I'm very attuned to that. That was one of the things, just to bring it back to us for a second. Like, I was incessantly, I never wanted to do that for 30 nights. We had to do that once or twice to like cover stuff up, but I never wanted it to be the movie where someone turns their back and all of a sudden says, well, here we are on night 29. I really wanted to make sure that never, because it just drives me insane.
That's actually a really interesting point about the ADR, because I think about ADR and I never think about it in terms of this usage. The way I always think about it is like you're reading the actor's lips, but there happens to be like an airfield next door, and you have the constant sound of airplanes. So they have to come in and loop their lines in cleanly. That's my sense of it. But I always take for granted that they also do this sort of stuff with ADR and add these unnecessary lines in just to, quote, make the story more clear.
Yeah, there's a number of like what would be B-roll of like them just sitting down at a table or getting ready for something, and then they've added in lines for two people, and it's too much lines. You just wouldn't do it like that. You would have to show an actor talking. It's just a decision that was made later.
So did some focus group say, I don't get why the sheriff is arresting him? Or, it's like, what makes a filmmaker say, before we see their mouths, let's add 3 lines of...
Yes, usually it is 100% that. Mm-hmm. But these didn't make any sense. That's why I said I wonder if he was just afraid of silence. There are some other movies where they just like... It's like they can't stand the silence. And so they're not even really helping doing anything, but it's a lot of what? Oh, no. It's like because they think they should.
Yeah, yeah.
And maybe they have like an overzealous sound designer being like, if you want, we can put this in here and put this in here. And they're like, yay. I'm not easy, but here almost none of them were needed at all. So I'm not sure.
Blissfully unaware of it.
Very frustrating. I mean, that's an interesting point, though, because Fisher Stevens, I mean, he's directed stuff before, but I mean...
Isn't he mostly documentaries?
I mean, he's mostly an actor. I mean, that's largely what he's done. But when it comes to directing, he's directed 6 documentaries. He's only directed, this is his 4th film that he's directed, one of which was just like a segment within a film. And he's done a little TV stuff. And I think like he's produced, I think more than anything, he's produced documentaries. Like I think, was it the Cove, that like expose documentary about activists tracking the... Oh, right. I
couldn't see that because dolphins. It was animals in peril.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yeah, dolphins off the coast of Japan. And I can't remember what it is. Like, are they being caught for tuna? I can't remember the movie, but I remember that he won an Oscar for producing that particular documentary. And so I guess that's where my head is with him. Like you said, documentaries, but mostly acting. And watching him direct this, I mean, I appreciate the honesty with which he's kind of directing the characters. I think some of that comes from the writing, but also just the way that he kind of cleanly does it. But then I feel like there are these moments that I'm like you were saying, like I'm not sure he was trusting himself with the way the story was being told, which is, it's frustrating. But I'm also not seeing anything in this that says, ooh, this is a Fisher Stevens film. Like there's nothing that, I could say that stands out as, oh, this is ownership of him saying, this is my movie. It does feel to that end very kind of straightforward.
In a way that I appreciate, though, because it helped the filmmaking style, the cinematography really helped ground it. The choice to have the kind of slightly moving camera, like it's handheld, but not overly done. He just has a couple like lockdown shots and a couple like when Justin Timberlake jumps into the trailer, it's really coolly filmed like from the side and below. So when you see both of his arms, it becomes doubly powerful. There's some neat, I personally like that he didn't put himself out there as a director saying, look, this movie is being directed, because in certain scenes when he did reach a little higher, it really elevated those scenes for me.
I thought he stayed out of the way of it in a great way.
That's a better way. Can you edit it so I said that?
ADR.
Yeah, we'll do some ADR.
I'll lip sync it.
Yeah, here, I'll come around and just...
he let the story unfold. And it's interesting that you said he's afraid of silence. I felt the opposite. The first 15, 20 minutes were very quiet.
Yeah.
And just watching this man reacclimate to life. And I think that's bold as a director to let there be that much silence and slow moving action. So I thought he did a fine job.
Yeah, traditionally you're supposed to have mainly this exists in horror, but usually in movie you have to have some big punch in the beginning that buys you silence. So the fact that he's just on the bus instead of starting it in prison.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Of like, hey, inmate Magoo, get out of here. Here's your stuff. Because that's a little bit of like prisons are distressing. And so then you can calm down into the movie. Instead, he's like, let's go on a bus ride in real time.
with great music playing too. I have to say, I just loved the score throughout this, the score, the music choices. I thought it all really helped convey kind of the emotional just tone of everything.
Yes. Oh, and just if I can say real quick, what I also liked when I keep saying honest and grounded, you know what this movie also could have been? Hillbilly Elegy.
Great point.
But it wasn't. He wasn't walking and just like everybody has a broken down car in their front lawn. Like there's a certain amount of authenticness. Yes, there's a lot of ashtrays overflowing. Yes, there's stuff, but it felt real. It wasn't just sort of shoving poverty or poverty porn or trashiness at us all the time. And they could have. That would have been one way to convey it. But instead, it felt like a real town.
Well, since you brought up ashtrays, I have to say seeing Justin Timberlake smoke was very jarring as a singer. And he's such a great singer. And it harkened me back to when I was a teenager and my mom caught that I had cigarettes. And most parents would say to their teenage daughter, you're going to get cancer. This is terrible. And my mom was so smart. And she was like, you're going to ruin your voice. And you're a singer. And it was so like, singer, right? Oh, she's right. Like, well, how can a singer? I'm a singer. I can't smoke. And watching him smoke quite a bit in this movie, I was like, oh my God, he's smoking. It made me very nervous.
Mandy, as an actress, have you ever smoked the Hollywood cigarettes, like the herbal cigarettes that they smoke on films? Because you're not allowed to smoke in real cigarettes.
I've done it in a play.
I've heard they're awful. Are they?
This was, I don't know what this was. This was like sage and something else. Because I think we were supposed to be smoking marijuana. So it smelled herbaceous. Okay. It smelled like marijuana more.
Wow.
But I'll smoke anything. I don't care.
Perfect.
So those aren't real cigarettes he's smoking?
No, you're not allowed to. By law, you're not allowed to because of secondhand smoke. Anytime you see characters, not since the beginning of time, but since like the 30s or something, it's this really rough smelling, not good tasting cigarette that is just not bad for you. Like there's a certain amount of bad because of if there's still carcinogens or combustion involved, but there's no nicotine, there's no tar, there's none of that. And you can tell that it's happening because it smells terrible.
I would imagine that it was a little after the 30s. I would think it was probably like the 80s or something when policy started shifting. I would imagine like those 60s and 70s. Yeah.
Oh, that's true. I guess in the 30s, we still had children working in mines. I'm sure they weren't like herbal cigarettes, please.
And doctors were still smoking while they delivered children. So
right.
Oh, yeah. What am I thinking? Everyone was wearing barrels. What do I forget what the 30s is? Okay, got it.
Well, I mean, just circling back to kind of the whole tone of this film. I mean, I think that it's a really good film with a good message. And I think I like what you were saying, Mandy, about it, Fisher Stevens just stepping back and allowing the story to do what it needed to do. I think there are a few times he might have gotten in a little too much, but I think on the whole, I think it works. And I find it an emotionally affecting film, even if I do find it a little bit lifetime-ish. And I think it does come across that way. But I guess, for a last point here is, and I think you mentioned this earlier, Tommy, by making this film that does maybe just seem a little more straightforward, generic, is that helpful when we're trying to tell a story about this young boy who is this non-conformity? Do you feel like it's going to help draw in a bigger audience who actually might be more affected by this message?
To Mandy's earlier point, sort of paraphrasing what Mandy's saying, I wanted it to go more into that. And I don't personally need this conventionality in order to draw me into that story. But I'm me. And Mandy and I live in Southern California. We are not necessarily representative of the majority or a sizable amount of the country. And so, if I wrongly said sugar to help the medicine go down, but I think if there's enough connect the dots of a story that you're comfortable with, I think maybe that would help ease you into this world that might seem kind of alienating to a lot of people, but is a world that is desperately important to have more outreach and visibility in the culture.
I don't know that closed-minded people are going to see this movie, But if they do, because they're fans of Justin Timberlake or something, I think it could be a nice way to ease them into opening their minds to people who have gender questions.
Yeah, I mean, I do too. I guess in the long and the short of it, I do think that this film is helpful. I think it is a positive story. I really do wish that they had found a way to make it, so a whole family could watch it, so that it wasn't quite so. Yeah. Hey, look at this,
very much so.
Raw sex scene right out of the gate before we have the family story. It made it a little more tough.
Agreed.
Yeah. Well, we love Letterboxd. In fact, for anyone who's listening to the show, Letterboxd has offered a discount to any Next Reel members. If you would like to upgrade to their pro or patron plans, you can head over to thenextreel.com/letterboxd and you can upgrade with a 20% discount, which is fantastic. So with that, though, let's all rank the film out of 5 stars. And then, of course, the Letterboxd heart. Where do you all stand with this film?
So, yeah, I would give it 3.5 stars with a heart.
3.5 and a heart. All right.
I liked it. I really did. And calling it a Lifetime movie just helps people understand the formula it follows. It's not necessarily a knock on it. I don't mean to be flippant about it. It was like a really well done Lifetime movie.
And I would agree with that. I mean, I think that there are Lifetime movies that it is a formula. And I think anybody who really watches a number of those, you really get a sense of that kind of formula. And I think that they do that well. Tommy, what would you rank it?
I agree with Mandy. 3.5. And I'd be. Can we do half? No, I'll just do 3.5. But it would be like 3.75 and a like is what I would normally do. But yeah, 3.5 and a like, and a very strong like. And I would watch this movie again.
That's great.
There are certain scenes that I thought were so well filmed. I don't know if I'd watch the entire movie again, but I want to see certain sequences and how he did it.
What's an example of one of those that stood out?
Again, the lead up, the big Justin Timberlake goes in and makes Jerry fly across the trailer. It was it's a smarter camera placement than I think it needed. And I like to see how he did it because it really ramps up. It's so cathartic.
Yeah.
And it's so something you've been waiting for. And that's a bunch of, it's just a really well done sequence, I think. So I'd like to see it again.
I think I'm at 3 stars, but I'm still going to give it a heart. I really enjoy the performances. I felt that just the relationship, watching that relationship between Palmer and Sam is really what made this film work for me. I really found that to be incredibly affecting. So 3 stars and a heart for me. And that puts us at an average of 3 1/3. So I think that's a pretty good place for this film. January used to be kind of the doldrums of films. It used to be kind of a dumping ground, and who knows what January is anymore these days. But I found, this actually was a solid film. I would have enjoyed seeing it in the theaters. I still enjoyed watching it at home. It was a solid emotional story. So I'm glad we got a chance to talk about it to you two.
Yes, very much so.
Thank you.
Well, for February, we have an exciting pair of films that we're going to be discussing. We're going to be talking about Judas and the Black Messiah, which releases February 12th in theaters and HBO Max, and Nomadland, which releases February 19th on Hulu.
And I'm going to be on the Nomadland one. Spoiler alert.
Which will be great. I look forward to talking with you on that one. And then we're going to do our February member bonus film board episode. It's going to be breaking news in Yuba County.
And I'm going to be on that one.
Well, everybody, don't forget to join our online community with fellow movie lovers. You can learn more at thenextreel.com/discord. And if you're interested in supporting us to help keep the lights on and get some great benefits while you're at it, head to thenextreel.com/membership. Thank you both for joining me to talk about Palmer today. It was a wonderful conversation, Tommy and Mandy.
Did I win?
Mandy, you always win. You are always the winner here.
Bless your heart.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us in the meeting room for a part of the film board, everybody. Here at The Next Reel, when the movie ends, our conversation begins.